Okay, now one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off this image here so I can see the UVs a little bit better on there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be switching from quite a lot from my checker pattern, which is this, so I can see the stretching going on in this area. There's a little bit going on in this area, and more than anything you want to avoid overlapping. So like here you got this bit where it's going to overlap. A lot of the time some stretching around this area is unavoidable, so you end up with getting a little bit of stretching, but that's fine. But the idea is you don't want to have any topology that's overlapping, because you're going to get problems with your normals, you're going to get problems with all sorts of stuff that's taking place when you're going to be doing that. Again, with the eyes here you're going to get a lot of that, so what we want to do is we want to flatten that out. And if we look at this bit here at the bottom, you got a lot of stretching taking place. You're going to try to equalize that to a certain level. Now all depends on the different models, the kind of detail that you're trying to project. Again, behind the ear here, if you look at that, that's all being projected over one another, and that's going to give us a lot of problems. And what we're going to do is we're going to flatten this out. A lot of the times people tend to take the ears and just make a kind of cut, and you can separate them out. All depends on the shape of your ear. If you want to allocate a separate place, you can actually locate it in a different part of your model. So you can just select all the faces, for instance, like this, all the parts that you want to select of the ear. Just go in, deselect things. If I just turn this off for a second, you'll go in and deselect parts of the ear, and then you'll go in, create a new island and separate it. But for this model we don't actually need to do that. So if your model has like elf ears or something like that, you might want to separate it into a separate piece. Another thing that a lot of what you tend to do is, for instance, here we've got the head and neck, a little bit of the neck, you'll separate that. And that might be the case in a lot of heads. A lot of the times your head might not even have, you might have your head as a separate unwrap, and your neck or your bust area as a separate piece. So you can go with two pieces. A lot of the times they'll share textures, depending. If you've got a bust only, you might not want to create a new texture, a new material for that, but it can mean that you can put them onto two different materials and have two different UV unwraps for them, so you don't have to do them as one piece. Usually you get one piece for the head, and then you'll get one piece for the body or whatever area that you're working with. So what we'll do is we'll start looking at how we're going to fix some of this stretching. The top part is something that we're going to have to separate and stitch back on. But let's try to fix some of the easier bits first. So if I turn the checker pattern on, there's obviously a lot of stretching going on here. This is serious stuff. So I'm going to use one of the brushes here. There's different tools to do this. I'm going to use the unfold brush. And if I start clicking on this area here, you'll start seeing, let me just turn this off, you'll start seeing that this bit is kind of getting flattened out. It's a cool tool, easily to kind of control, and that kind of flattens out the whole ear for me. So if I do the same in that area, you can see that flattens that out. You have to be careful with this brush as well at the same time, because it can give you some it can squash some of the areas as well, so and move parts of it in. So I'm just going to go around the lips again. If I put my checker back on, let's see what was happening around this area, because they tend to go in there. I might have to individually separate some of these points if they start kind of hitting one another. So turn that on so I can see what I'm doing in that area. I'm just clicking this, so I'm kind of flattening it out. Might want to decrease the size of my brush for the nostril area here. Let me just turn RGB, sorry, let me just turn this off so you can see on me. I can turn this on and off, this sRGB functionality, so you can see the polys, the UVs a little bit. So if you see that, what I had here was I had UVs that are being projected, that are written over on top of each other, so they're placed on one on top of the other. So if I flatten that out, that means that when I start texturing this area, I'll get like texture going inside rather than it kind of overlapping. And just flatten out this area a little bit, and like I said, it can be quite of a difficult area, so I'm just clicking and flattening parts of it out. There's a bit of stretch going on in that area. I can nudge some of the UVs, like I can use the move tool to kind of move parts of it to kind of unify parts. So I can take my time, I can scale the size on this and just move UVs to try to match that as well. So for instance, if I was to kind of, you know, drag some of these across and then do the same, and just move some of these. What I'm doing is I'm just trying to match that. Like I said, it can, in some of these areas it's very hard to avoid a little bit of stretching, but that's fine in comparison to what we had before, and especially if you're going to do 3D texturing, it's not going to matter that much. You've got this option here, so let's hit the optimize option. You can optimize some of these, and you can see that might increase the sizes of our checkers. The idea is, if you're using the checkered pattern, is to try to make the pattern as consistent as possible across. So if I take that and start stretching some of this out, so actually I'll go and I'll turn on my unfold option so I can see what I'm doing there. So again, that bit that was going inside, that's nicely unwrapped now. The area that's left is this bit here and then the neck, and we're gonna press B, hold that down and increase the size of our brush, and we're gonna slowly just unwrap that whole area. I'm just gonna move that up a bit. Without making it too flat, I'm just gonna do that. Just switch from that to optimize. So optimize helps you pull them back a little bit, and let's get the chin area. I'm hitting the optimize to kind of get them quite close. If I look at that now, most of my UVs in most places are quite the same size. I mean, the neck area, I've got a little bit going on in that area, so I can try to unfold this a little bit more. And what that will do is hit optimize on this bit, and you'll try to get it as close as possible. So take your time. But if I now look at this model and look at the model itself and look at the UVs, that is much more closer to where it should be. So you can play around with that, try to get the checkered pattern as close as possible. Like I said, some bits will be quite hard to achieve. In the past, people have even gone in, press select UV for instance, and they can, you know, go in and select point by point in areas and move them or nudge them. If I go into my selection settings, you can turn on your soft selection, and if I turn that on, you can see I get a control over the radius of this. So if I turn 0.1 that's too high. Let's go for 0.02. Even out 0 has. There we go. I'm just going to put this down to 0.1. You can see that if I select that and move that around, I can even have a point selected, and I can nudge them by point as well, just to kind of fix parts of it up. It is possible, it is tweaking your UVs, but it's not going to make a massive difference in our life. I'm just letting you know that that is a possibility if you want to perfect that. But for what we're trying to do in this demo, that's good enough. So I'm just going to quickly go and just reuse this again. Actually, might as well turn this off. Okay. I'm going to turn my selection tool off, soft selection, so it doesn't give me any problems later on. The next bit, I'm going to just show you the top bar, and that's our unwrap then completed.